A disenfranchised and depressed government worker finds some much needed inspiration when he decides to write a comic book based on his dull and uneventful life. Sound cool? Good, because I'm here to talk about American Splendor from 2003. So this film was directed by Shari Berman and Robert Pulicini, known at the time for their documentary work. And it stars the always wonderful Paul Giamatti as Harvey Pekar, who was an underground cult comic writer in the 70s and 80s in the Cleveland area. After one of the coolest opening credit sequences I've ever seen, it's not as good as the one for the movie Super, but nothing is. Which is put together in kind of a comic book style. You see young Harvey in the 1950s trick-or-treating with some other kids in the neighborhood. He isn't wearing a costume like everyone else is. He finds it pointless, and it shows you that even as a child, Harvey was a curmudgeon. I love how us non-film school students always sound kind of dumb when we try to talk about the technical aspects of a film. But I definitely have to comment on the color tones here. The drab browns and gritty look really add some charm to this film. I get some sort of Wes Anderson vibes, which is more than okay by me. And I have never really seen another film quite like this, which is part documentary, as you have the real-life Harvey Pekar narrating it and Paul Giamatti playing Harvey. The comic book style animated sequences won me over, along with everything else, pretty much instantly. This film is pretty stylized. It's classy. It's ridiculously charming. Did I say that already? It's charming. So after the opening scene, we jump to the year 1975. Harvey is visiting a doctor because he seems to be losing his voice. The doctor says it's just wore out, likely from too much ranting and yelling, and he needs to give his throat a rest for a while or he could do some serious damage. And then on top of that, his wife is leaving him as she is clearly miserable and needs a change. Harvey is a file clerk at a VA hospital, which he gets no satisfaction from whatsoever, and since it doesn't pay super well, he buys and sells used jazz records to help pay the bills. He started collecting records when he was 15, and as most collectors are, he's pretty obsessive about it. Before that, he had already been collecting comic books, which still interest him. Now, flashback to 1962. At a yard sale, he meets a guy named Robert Crumb, a greeting card illustrator and fellow comic book and jazz fan. Harvey and Robert instantly bond. Returning to 1975 after Robert moving away, he returns to Cleveland for a visit. Now, he has become more popular with his art, but he isn't happy drawing greeting cards. Harvey shows Robert some comics that he's been writing. He wants to do something different in the comic book world, something not superhero-oriented. So he uses his own life for source material and as a way to voice his own frustration. Robert really likes the idea and he likes the comics and he offers to illustrate them. And the comic is called American Splendor, and it quickly becomes pretty popular in the underground comic scene. Harvey seems to enjoy the success, and he seems at least slightly less miserable. As I said, it seems to be a good outlet for him to voice his frustration with the world. It's good for him, we all need one. He still hates his job, though. One day at a local bakery, he runs into an old college classmate. She makes small talk with Harvey, and she's sweet and genuine and is happy for his recent success. He learns that she's married and has kids, while he is divorced and alone. This encounter leaves him feeling even more detached and lonely than before. And all the while, there is a comic book shop in Delaware owned by a woman named Joyce and a friend of hers. She's a huge American Splendor fan, and he sold the last copy of the current issue, forgetting to save one for her. So Joyce writes a letter to Harvey asking if she can just get a copy directly from him, and he's happy to hear from her and wants to get to know her. They send each other letters back and forth and eventually start talking on the phone. So Harvey suggests that since they have a lot in common, she should come visit him in Cleveland. She reluctantly agrees. She's nervous since she doesn't really know what he looks like, only having, seen him in comic form. You got pre-internet days were weird, man. After she arrives, they go to dinner, and then they go to Harvey's apartment, which, by the way, is a complete disgusting mess. He tells her that he was going to clean up, but that would be dishonest, and he wanted her to see him for who he is, an extremely messy person. Joyce is cute and awkward, and really a perfect fit for Harvey if there ever was one. That same night, she suggests they skip the whole courtship and just get married. Even for him, it seems like a weird plan, but he rolls with it, and he agrees. As good of a match as they argue like an old couple constantly, almost right away. Harvey's an incredibly difficult person, but so is Joyce. So American Splendor ends up getting turned into a pretty successful stage show in LA. Molly Shannon actually plays Joyce, which was cool. In the movie, not the actual show. Harvey is almost happy. As happy as he's ever been, anyways. Joyce, his recent success, he's feeling a sense of purpose. And she is happy for him, too, but she wants things that Harvey can't give her, like her own space in the cramped, messy apartment. And she also wants a family. Now, probably my favorite part of this entire film were Harvey's appearances on the David Letterman show. And what's cool about them is they use the actual footage. And as a kid, I watched a lot of Letterman, and Harvey's appearances are the wildest I've ever seen. If I were to compare him to anyone, and it's hard, it would have to be Andy Kaufman. Harvey is just himself, man. He pulls no punches, gives no fucks. He even gets fired up at David Letterman on live TV. It's so awesome. Now, I have kind of failed to mention Harvey's friend and co-worker, Toby, played absolutely fucking brilliantly by Judah Friedlander. He's like a character straight out of Napoleon Dynamite, except he's a real-life person. The scene where he drives almost 3 hours to see Revenge of the Nerds is so brilliant. And Toby actually becomes kind of famous too because of his American Splendor appearances, and he becomes an MTV star, at least for a short time. There's a scene where Harvey gets recognized in public, but it's for the wrong reason, and it actually really irritates him. It's pretty funny. He's pissed because the guy recognizes him from being on Letterman and not for his work. Well, I've already given away too much. I can't help it. At least there is some stuff I didn't spoil, other things that Harvey and Joyce, have to go through. And there's quite a bit. And really, I can't recommend this film enough. It really is a special one. Great, memorable characters, all of which are real people, and a lot of care was put into finding the right actors that would do them justice. I would highly recommend this to anyone, especially to fans of quirky stuff like Napoleon Dynamite, Wes Anderson films, and even documentaries, because this kind of is one. I don't see any reason not to give American Splendor a 10 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed watching this, and I think it's going to stick with me for a long time. Cheers, guys.